The heavy rain continues to pour relentlessly, as if the sky is unleashing all its fury upon the small coastal town by the Adriatic Sea. The firefighters, with their soaked uniforms, are racing against time, desperately trying to deploy forces across the flooded areas. The streets have turned into vast rivers, the water rising so high that the distinction between the road and the sidewalk has disappeared. The flickering streetlights reflect on the floodwaters, creating a haunting scene reminiscent of a disaster movie. In the darkness and rain, each step taken by the rescue teams feels like a confrontation with helplessness, as the water continues to rise without end. The basements of buildings have been completely submerged, with water flooding into every corner, sweeping away everything in its path. The streets, once a place where locals gathered and chatted, are now nothing more than murky patches of water, with violent currents carrying debris, trees, and sometimes even valuable possessions. The famous promenade, once a symbol of the town with its lush green trees, has now been swallowed by the floodwaters. Residents, in a panic, try to move their belongings to higher ground, but in the face of such a violent disaster, their efforts seem insignificant. The air is thick with the smell of mildew and the pungent mix of rainwater and overflowing sewage. Reports from locals indicate that several cars have been swept away by the fierce floodwaters, tumbling straight into the Adriatic Sea. The once bustling coastline is now desolate, with overturned cars submerged in the pitch-black waters. Coastal roads are no longer safe, and anyone daring to venture outside faces the terrifying risk of being dragged into the flood. The relentless rain shows no signs of stopping, and the storm continues to rage, leaving the townspeople trapped in fear, uncertain of what might come next. They peer out of their windows, only to witness the raging floodwaters, carrying everything in their path. The entire area from Podgora to Torrential has been plunged into complete darkness, as the storm has cut off all power supplies. 3,000 households, from small neighborhoods to seaside villas, are now left with nothing but flickering candlelight and dim flashlight beams. The sound of children crying out in fear echoes through the eerily silent night, while adults try to comfort them, though their hearts are filled with anxiety. Homes have turned cold and shadowy without the electricity to sustain daily life. The faint glow from flashlights casts flickering shadows on the walls, making the atmosphere even more haunting and eerie. In the distance, massive storm clouds are gathering, forming a dark wall looming over the Adriatic Sea. Meteorologists have warned that these clouds could bring even heavier rainfall, threatening to flood additional areas that are already underwater. These clouds are not just a gathering of moisture, they seem to carry the wrath of nature, ready to unleash upon the town at any moment. The wind from the sea blows fiercely, carrying the salty scent and the chill of moisture, making the atmosphere even more oppressive. The townspeople gaze up at the sky, uncertain of what terrible events might come next. A significant shock occurred when the temperature suddenly dropped from 23 degrees Celsius to 12 degrees Celsius in just a few short hours. The biting cold from the sea pierced through the coats of those trying to evacuate the flooded area. A sense of coldness and gloom has settled over the town, as the residents struggle not only with the raging flood, but also with the increasingly harsh cold. Strong winds slam against windows, amplifying the eerie and brutal sounds, as if nature itself is unleashing its fury on every living creature on the ground. Goran Basel, the fire chief, with a tense face and worried eyes, described the situation in the most grim terms possible: catastrophic. He emphasized that the rescue teams are becoming increasingly helpless in the face of the intensifying floodwaters. Along the banks of the Makara River, water has breached the makeshift levees, and the current is growing stronger, rendering all efforts to contain it futile. Rescue workers are forced to operate under harsh conditions, with strong winds and floodwaters carrying mud and debris. Their faces show the strain, but no one stops. Everyone is determined to save every remaining life they can. The residents of Padre seem accustomed to chaos, but even they cannot hide their anxiety as the water levels continue to rise relentlessly. They wade through the flooded streets, desperately trying to find a safer place, but all around them is filled with despair. Families fortunate enough to have transportation have evacuated quickly, but many remain trapped in their buildings, hoping the rescue teams will arrive in time. Cries for help echo from the houses into the night, but between the pounding rain and howling wind, it is difficult for anyone to hear. Along the coastline, the situation has become worse than ever. Massive waves crash against the shore with unprecedented force, sweeping away trees and debris from the structures along the coast. The seawater and floodwater have merged into one, creating a vast body of water engulfing the entire area. The houses on the hills, once symbols of safety, are now isolated islands amidst the sea. The survivors on the highest hills look down, witnessing the town gradually being submerged, their hearts filled with terror at the overwhelming power of nature. Under the torrential rain, firefighters and heavy machinery are tirelessly working to clear the debris. The roar of the machines echoes, but against the sheer power of the floodwaters, all efforts seem futile. Buildings are gradually being overtaken by the rising water, their walls collapsing bit by bit under immense pressure. The ground shakes as chunks of earth are swept away, leaving behind dangerous sinkholes. The rushing water devours everything in its path, forcing the rescue teams to battle hour by hour to prevent the town from disappearing completely beneath the floodwaters. In this dire situation, the storm shows no signs of letting up. Local television stations are continuously broadcasting urgent warnings, advising residents to evacuate immediately. However, the roads have been cut off by floodwaters, and transportation has become impossible. The townspeople gradually realize they have no way out but to wait for the storm to pass. Families separated and out of contact with their loved ones are filled with overwhelming anxiety and fear. A local resident, Dalma Janis, is trying to remain calm as she shares with us over the phone. "I've never seen anything this terrifying. The rain hasn't stopped, and floodwaters have poured in everywhere. The entire town has disappeared into a sea of water, and we don't know how much longer it will be before everything is completely submerged." Her voice trembles, and although she is trying to stay composed, the fear is evident in every word she says. She also mentioned that many people in her area are trapped on the upper floors of their homes, with no option but to wait for help. The bridges connecting the town have become the most dangerous points. The floodwaters have risen so high that they threaten to sweep these structures away at any moment. Rescue teams are forced to use small boats to reach the isolated houses, braving the fast currents and the constant risk of capsizing. Dramatic scenes unfold as each resident is rescued from their flooded homes, clinging tightly to the rescue boats as if they were the last lifeline of their lives. The rescue teams are working non-stop in the cold, relentless rain, with no time to rest or eat. At the Emergency Relief Center, dozens of families have gathered, filled with tension and fear. Volunteers are doing their best to provide food and water to those affected, but supplies are gradually running out. No one knows how long the situation will last, and tired eyes watch the television screen, where news reports continuously update the flooding situation. The atmosphere in the relief center becomes increasingly stifling as people wonder what tomorrow will bring and whether they will still have homes to return to. Meanwhile, in the distance, the storm clouds grow thicker and more ominous, a sign that this nightmare is far from over. The entire town is shrouded in darkness and rain, with thunder echoing across the sky. The Adriatic Sea is surging with violent waves, and the storm could strike at any moment. Everyone holds their breath, waiting for what will happen next, but no one can be sure of what's to come. This small coastal town has now become a mere temporary place, where nature could swallow it whole in the blink of an eye.